Now, Hunter, can you just take us back and give us like a little history on as far as your drug and alcohol problem? Like, how far back does it date? And then
Yeah,
what was like the worst part of it? What was the rock bottom part of
yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely. So I actually, a lot of stories that you hear have broken homes and they have violence and abuse. My story didn't start out like that. I had everything I needed. Um, if you've heard Zach's story, it's very similar to Zach's story in the sense
Hmm.
that I was taken care of. I was taken care of my whole life, and if anything, I got too much as a kid and growing up. I got a football injury. I grew up in West Texas. Football was everything. I got an injury and I got prescribed, I think, hydrocodone. And I just remember the very first time taking these painkillers and just feeling this feeling that I had never felt before. And it was almost like a void was filled. It was almost like I was finally comfortable. I can remember like going downstairs and talking to my dad and just feeling like funny and talkative and just like alive. And I didn't know what that was at the time, right? I mean, I thought that was medicine. It's not a bad thing. Um, and I won't get too far into it because I could talk forever, but slowly, like I started wanting more of that medicine. And when that medicine was gone, I can remember going back, weeks later, and it's not like it happened overnight, but going back weeks later and finding a different bottle of it. My dad was a dentist, that stuff was kind of around, and thinking like, oh, I got a headache. Maybe I'll take one of these. This seemed to make me feel good last time. And before I knew it, like I would be at my friends' houses going to the master bathroom looking for pills.
Wow. Wow.
And that slowly turned into seeking it out from people. I mean, I was a little hustler about it. Like I would see a girl on crutches or see someone that had their wisdom teeth taken out or whatever, and I would ask if they had pain medicine. And that's just kind of how I started this all out. By the time I went to UT in Austin to school, that's when I started getting around dealers. I was in a fraternity. I was able to meet a lot of different people, and that's when things got really bad because I had so much access to it.
So, Hunter, this started what, your senior year of high school?
Probably about my sophomore
Oh, wow.
year of high school is
So it's
when
only
I
like
first.
15 years old.
Yeah, yeah, and that's when I first. And you know what? Like I was smoking weed. I was in high school. I smoked weed. I drank a lot, but for me, like, so it started off as this recreational thing, but like eventually what happened is that by the time I was in college, I knew that I needed to take that medicine to feel okay. And
Mm.
I was addicted to the pain medicine by the time I went to college. And it turned into this thing where when I woke up in the morning, guys, like I had to take, at least 10 pills or I was sick. And
Wow.
and then it got
Whoa.
worse.
And this
And
was a
then it
daily
took-
thing?
Whoa.
Oh yeah. So and then
Wow.
it turned into I had just to get loaded, I'm having to take 12 at a time. Then it turned into 14 at a time. By the time that I was at the bottom of my, my bottom, I was taking anywhere from 80 to 100 Vicodin a day.
God.
And then I moved to Oxy, right? I had to go to Oxycontin and started doing that. And I think that that's what a lot of people don't understand is that
Wow.
it's a progressive disease. And I started so early and it just kept going up from there.
Hunter,
Uh,
could your friend, I mean, the people that didn't know what you would do behind closed doors, could they tell that something was off?
Yeah. Yeah. So, my close friends knew that there was a problem. We all kind of smoked weed and stuff like that, but they knew that I took medicine and I seeked it out. And I got to the point where I was driving to Houston to meet with a dealer and I was selling. So they knew, but it's crazy because I can remember like watching Intervention and having like with my buddies and my buddies kind of being like, hey, like, that's kind of like you.
You.
Yeah.
And I can remember I threatened one of my best friends one time and I said, if you ever tell my parents or my family about this, like, I'll just end it. Like, I'll kill myself. And
Wow.
Eventually that's what happened. Eventually one of my buddies just kind of had enough and he literally called my family, went to rehab the first time. And I didn't really understand that I could never drink again. Didn't understand that it was like, this is forever. And so
How old were
I
you when you
didn't
first
really-
went to rehab?
I was 19. No, I was 20. I was 20. And I came back to Austin immediately. I did live in a halfway house, but I didn't do what the people told me to do. And I was back to using, I relapsed and was back to using within 60 days. And that's when things got really bad. That's when, a lot of the stealing started. I started doing heroin because I couldn't afford Oxy. And I had these plots. I mean, I would go with a clipboard into people's houses in Austin with fake uniforms, acting like a water guy or an energy guy to check lines, and I would steal their medication. I mean, I was bad. Wow. I was a junkie, and eventually I got into some trouble with some prescription stuff. And if you guys want to know the whole story, it's on my Instagram Live. It's too much to get into, but I almost went to prison. I got very, very lucky with that situation. I ended up in rehab. The night I went to rehab was March 23rd of 2007. And I went in, I took 32 pills when I got there, and I OD'd. And so that was like my bottom. I thought I was going to prison. I OD'd. I remember waking up in my detox room and just thinking, like, you've got a choice to make. You're either going to go back to Austin, hitchhike to Austin, and live couch to couch getting loaded until you overdose and die, or you're going to do this. Like, you're going to get sober. You're going to do what they tell you to do, and you're going to get sober. And guys, I remember I packed my bags. Like, I was ready to leave and just go, to the bitter end. And then something came over me. I mean, I'm hugely competitive, as we all saw. And something came over me. And part of that is my God. I have a God. He's what my version of God is. And the other part of it is just my competitive nature and thinking, like, I'm not going to let this win. And I remember getting on my knees and just shouting and saying, God, if you want me to do this, you better help me out. And there was also another part of me that wanted to prove all these people, like in AA, that this didn't work. Like, you're telling me to do all these things, but I don't think this is a disease. So I'm going to prove you wrong. And I'm going to do everything you tell me to do. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to say, I told you so. And I remember that day I went to the first class. I walk out, went to class, and I did not ever turn my back. I went to every single class. I did everything they told me. I moved into Kerrville, which is a little bitty town in Texas, to get sober.
Outside of San Antonio.
I lived with 8 grown men in a 3-bedroom house, halfway house. I bagged groceries. I went to meetings every day, and I just threw myself into this thing, and I became a way of life. And before I knew it, I was speaking at different treatment centers and hospitals and jails, and I was sponsoring guys. And eventually I came to the realization that, like, I was wrong. This thing does work, because I actually started doing it. I treated real recovery like oxygen. I treated it like I was drowning. And when you're drowning, you will literally do anything for air. And that's what I treated recovery like. I will do anything to stay sober. And I stayed sober. I stayed there for a year, went back to Austin. Eventually I graduated, got a 4.0 the rest of school. Somehow I didn't get kicked out before.
Congrats.
Got a really met the love of my life, moved to Houston, got a career, moved up in my career, got a house, had 2 babies. And it's insane. I'm 14 years sober today. And I think,
wow, congrats, man.
Congrats to that.
What's
incredible.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I think for me, there's a couple of things. There's the fact that there's so many people out there that are struggling so hard right now with this disease, and they don't know who to turn to. They don't know what to do. They're so scared. They don't know there's a solution, and they think they're too far to get help. And I can assure each and every one of those people that you are never too far. You can always get better, and you can always do anything you want to do. I mean, I was a hopeless junkie. If I would have gone to prison when I should have, I would just now be getting out on parole, maybe. And so my
that was
life,
14 years ago.
That was 14 years ago. Yeah, my life looks dramatically different than it would have. And here's the thing, like I also want people to understand, especially young people, that like this is not a joke. This thing is like a bear trap, and it will slam on you without you knowing. And I think also it's important to understand, like, this disease does not have any prejudice. It doesn't care if you're rich, poor, black, white, skinny, fat. It doesn't care what neighborhood you're from. It doesn't care what your background is. It will get you. And I think for me, I never knew that, right? And so I think it's important for young people to understand that this can get anyone.